All right, Councilor Hamel, I believe you're all set to start.
Okay, just give me a second here.
There's no agenda on the front?
There was an agenda that should have been emailed, Councilor Johnson. I think it came from Tody. I can forward you the email.
I'm sure I get it.
It's pretty basic here. One second.
Got it. Thank you.
You're ahead of me here, so.
I took the one that you mailed.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just rearranging.
Want me to mail it back?
No, it's okay. I'm just rearranging my screen here. I had it all set to go and then I pushed the wrong button, so just bear with me. All right, so welcome. I'd like to call to order the December 7th Appointments and Negotiations Committee. I'd like to take attendance if you will so allow. So let's see, Councilor Gleistein.
Here.
Councilor Johnson.
Here.
And I am here. So first order of business is for us to review and approve the October 5th minutes. And you should have a copy of those. We made one revision. Tracy sent out the revised copy, and there's a highlighted sentence, second or third sentence of the second paragraph. But otherwise, if you've had a chance to read that, can I have a motion to approve the October 5th minutes?
So moved.
Point of clarity, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We just went through something similar on the Communications Committee. Because
okay.
we had minutes to approve, and we had two brand new committee members.
Okay.
There was not a quorum. So you were both on this committee beforehand, is that correct?
No, I was the only member.
Okay. So what we did, I'll let Liam speak, but I think we deferred the approval to the next meeting to give the other committee members a chance to watch the meetings via Zoom.
So is that necessary, or can't we just have them read the meetings and say they approve the minutes and give us an email? So I'd like to approve these subject to their approval via email.
I think, Tom, you told us before we can do the minutes whether or not we were members. I believe you've told us that before.
So I appreciate the question, but I'm not sure I'm going to follow the recommendation.
You're fully constituted. I think you're in your authority to vote on them. But if there are reservations, that's to be observed as well.
So I get the point that Councilor Johnson is proposing. I don't necessarily agree with the process he's suggesting, but I'm going to try to keep an open mind. I'll see how he feels about. Can we approve these subject to the email approval from Peter Hayes and Jean Marie Caterina?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it, Don. It was a procedural question.
No, that's. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's a great call, and I appreciate you doing that. So, can I have a motion to that effect then of what I suggested, or Councilor Johnson's, either one?
So, I'm not sure how we move to discussion on this. Peter's not even a counselor anymore, so my suggestion would just be we approve them, and as a courtesy, send them out and say if you have any input, we can amend the minutes if you'd so like to make amendment changes, and that way if it's done, it's off the books, we have them approved. That would just be my input, and then.
And Ken, how are you on that as another revision in the proposal?
I'm good.
Okay. So Betsy, can you restate that please as a motion, and we'll vote on that?
Yeah, so we'll just approve it the way you asked for. So I just make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I second.
And we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor?
You want to have some discussion on it, Don? I'll repeat
we'll
that.
further discussion on it? Yeah. By the way, I just want to highlight everyone, the questions are going to get a lot tougher as the agenda goes on. So let's warm up here. Okay.
This is a warm-up.
Right. Yeah, for discussion, I'll ask the assistant town manager or the town manager or whoever they assign to get copies of the minutes to Peter Hayes and Counselor Katarina and ask if they have any amendments. And if they do, that they forward them back and that we take those amendments up in a future meeting.
Great. And we'll have this back on the agenda, hopefully with their input on the next Appointments and Negotiations
If they
Committee
don't
meeting.
make it, then we're done with it because we've already approved them.
Okay. So with that motion, can we take a vote to close discussion? All those in favor will do a yay or a nay vote. So Counselor Gleisting,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
and I am a yay. So that's 3 positive votes, unanimous 3-0. And thank you, Ken, for helping us stay on our toes.
Well, we got to start the meeting right.
Good refresher. So so when you go back to the agenda, what I'd like to suggest is, can I ask for someone to make a motion for a change in the agenda? I'd like to, and I've discussed this one-on-one with counselors ahead of time, but in the interest of time and efficiency, could we cover items in the following order? A, the collective bargaining agreements, then we'll follow C, review and approve the town manager evaluation process and timeline. And then we'll go through staffing of vacancies and go as long as we can until we hit the 90-minute mark max. So could I have some discussion on that and a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we change the order of the agenda item 4 to be A, C, B.
Okay. And do I have a second on that?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? Okay, with that, no discussion. I think we'll just go ahead and call the vote. Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisting,
Yes.
and I'm also in favor of that. So it's unanimous revision to the agenda. And with that, it's over to you, Liam.
Great, thank you, Councillor Hamel. So I have prepared, and again, I thought that would be just as profitable to go over it real time. I apologize for not distributing the 4 slides I'll go over, but let me share my screen here. All right. And, again, I thought just to provide some background and context, I've been talking with Councillor Hamel, or we've been kind of talking for, I think that your entire time on the council, if you agree with that, Dawn, about how to, kind of what the process should be or could be as we enter into collective bargaining discussions in terms of, making sure the council's kept apprised of what those issues are. And I think that we both agreed that this was really the appropriate committee to do that. What we thought would be an appropriate kind of start to that process is kind of just a high level overview of what's coming down the pike, what this committee will be charged with, working through in the next 6 or 7 months as we move through negotiating some successor agreements. And also as we are currently in process of negotiating an initial agreement for a new bargaining group. So for tonight, I thought we'd go through that timeline process, maybe make some high level points. And of course, there'll be quite a lot of follow-up, but we'll go through this.
One thing I'd like to say at the outset, I'd like to just say thank you to Councillor Babine, who revised the charter of the committee, to add negotiations to it. And then we sort of built on that theme. But it was his suggestion, and he was actually the one that got us started on this journey. So you can either thank him or or not for that. So I'm not sure if I just muted myself here.
So looking at, actually, let me go back here. Bear with me as I work through this. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So just at a high level, at a glance, right now we're going to be renegotiating a police contract, a dispatch contract, and a fire collective bargaining agreement. So if you recall, the police and dispatch agreements are 3-year agreements that are expiring. The fire agreement was that 1 year, we called it an extension, but in essence, it was a 1-year collective bargaining agreement. All 3 of those, which have for historically been the only collective bargaining agreements we've had in town, all expire June 30 of 2021, so the end of this fiscal year. Public Works did form, their operations division did form a new bargaining agreement. Negotiations are underway in that regard. They have not progressed, I don't think as expeditiously as some would hope, but it's always really challenging coming to terms on an initial agreement. So in some regard, that's to be expected.
Could you pause there, Liam? Just give a little background to Betsy and to Ken, on that new unit, if you could.
Yeah. So this was, obviously under state statute, public employees have with some exceptions, which are again fairly explicitly spelled out in the statute. Public employees have the ability to collective bargaining for working conditions, wages, benefits, those items of negotiation. Scarborough for a long time was really the outlier. I can't actually, I think I can maybe think of one other community that doesn't have an organized public works division in southern Maine anyway, of any municipality of some size. There was a division, so this is the operations division. These would be the road maintenance workers, plow truck drivers, etc. Did organize this summer to form their own unit, which we again certainly respect. But in order to come to terms to an initial agreement, all of those things that are typically found in a collective bargaining agreement need to be negotiated. And again, that takes some time, particularly if one side or the other is looking for some substantial changes to those wages, benefits, and working conditions. So that is underway.
What size of that bargaining unit, Liam?
Yeah, so initially it was 12 actual employees. I think it will ultimately cover about 15 positions. We had a few vacancies, if you recall, during the budget process that we deferred hiring. And then we had, I think, one other individual who was in their probationary period, which is one of the exceptions to the public employee rule. So I think 15 will be the size of the unit.
Thank you.
Yep. So just to preview, what I think I hope we'll spend some time talking about in the future, and for the Appointments and Negotiations Committee, is really those economic items. So wages, medical insurance, dental insurance, and retirement are really the cost drivers and the cost centers around these collective bargaining agreements that I think this committee really should weigh in on. And we'll talk a little bit about what that role could be.
That's great, and I think our focus would be on the cost. Obviously, that's something ultimately we have to take to the council to approve with a recommendation. What I would say is that we would like you, though, to touch on other things that might have to do with work rules and so forth that may not have direct economic aspects to them. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yep. So I thought it might be helpful for the committee to have some context, some recent changes. Right or wrong, things don't change very quickly. Well, again, everyone on this committee certainly has appreciation for how quickly government moves, and labor agreements aren't discernibly different from that. But in the last, so I just thought it would be important to highlight some of the changes we've seen in the last. For the most part, last agreement with fire department, you'll see that one of these changes that I've highlighted was actually the prior agreement, but again, with it being such a short-term successor agreement, it's sort of one and the same. So in the current police contract, there was a fairly substantial change to the retirement plan offerings. So they were in what the main PERS plan, special plan 1C, which was a 20-year, no age, 50% retirement plan. They actually came forward to us and requested to move to plan 3C, which is a 25-year, 2/3 retirement. It actually cost the town less in terms of a contribution percentage. So that was a change that we were very receptive to. The way it worked with the change is that all new employees would move into that lower cost retirement plan, and all existing employees would have kind of a one-time option to move. I believe of the unit of 36 or 37, all but 5 did move into that lower cost option. So that was a win-win all the way around. Another point in the police contract, you'll see the wage scale, rather than being a flat percentage adjustment by a cost of living adjustment, we actually averaged out the cost of living adjustment and applied that across the entire wage scale for both patrol and sergeant ranks. The reason for that was there was some concern on both sides of the table about attracting the best talent and retaining that talent. And we thought that increasing that lower end scale would be kind of mutually beneficial to that end. So that was a somewhat unique change. As far as dispatch, there were some market adjustments for supervisory positions. So again, as you look at the wage scale included in the existing collective bargaining agreement, you'll notice that there's a certain cost of living adjustment for everyone. And then on top of that, for our lead dispatchers, there was an additional adjustment in 2 of the 3 years. One of the objectives going into the last round of collective bargaining negotiations, and again, I would say this does extend to the fire department as well, was actually all of the groups, including non-union, had no cost single coverage. So it required no participation on the employee's behalf or part to contribute towards their insurance. I think that we all felt that that was an antiquated policy. So we did eliminate that through the last round of collective bargaining negotiations. We also, looking at kind of our census data, across, again, non-union, police, dispatch, we found that there's very low participation in our lower cost medical insurance plan. So one of the things we did was we actually indexed our employer contribution to that lower cost plan to make it a little bit, actually bring down the cost of that plan and make it more attractive, while also having a consistent contribution to the medical insurance plan offerings, whether they enrolled in the higher cost plan or the lower cost plan, the employer cost stayed the same. So it took some of that variability out of it. I am happy, to report that at least initially, and again, I haven't taken a look at the census data for 2021, but initially we had, again, about a census of about 130 employees. I think we had 6 enrolled in that lower cost option. After we made this policy change, we had about 30% move into that lower cost plan. Again, it really made no difference to us. The employer was effectively paying the difference in that higher cost plan, but it certainly made that more attractive. And then the fire department did move to a higher deductible medical insurance plan. Again, we complement that with a health reimbursement arrangement. But that was the plan that they moved to. They were, again, off cycle. So that was a plan they adopted, they adopted January 1 of 2018. When we negotiated the different plan offerings that I just went over with police and dispatch, we actually did offer that same benefit offering to the fire department. They respectfully declined, and they were happy with their product that they had gotten used to. So again, some data that we'll talk about in the future is, kind of how our various employee groups, which had historically been 4 main employee groups. Now it's 5, but one's really tracking with non-union until we have an agreement. Trying to get as much consistency across those groups as possible for equity purposes. And the last one, which I believe I can't see because it's my screen's covering it, was deferral of cost of living adjustments. Again, lots of discussion at the council level this spring as we work through our budget process. But police and dispatch did defer their cost of living adjustment by 6 months from July 1 of 2020 to January 1 of 2021, again, halfway through the fiscal year. That was something that we also negotiated in the 1-year fire contract. But that's kind of I think the intention here is to give some context to what changes have occurred in the last few agreements. We don't see, I don't think that we typically see a lot of changes in movement with regard to retirement plans and medical insurance costs. But we have made some pretty significant strides, I would argue, in the last 2 to 3 years with regard to the cost of employee benefits.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I'd like to pause here for a moment and just say this is a great body of work that was driven primarily by you and Tom and the town staff. So, this is significant, and I think it'd be really helpful, and if it's not too much work, at some point to estimate what the total savings we think are represented by these changes. I think that it's really significant. So I just wanted to pause and say thank you for that and acknowledge the work. And also just to see if Betsy or Ken at this point would like to ask a few questions on what you went through before we go through the rest of it. Ken, Betsy?
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute, and I'll re-video again. Yeah, so how important is it to have, how many total employees do we have in the town of Scarborough, not non-school, across all the bargaining units and the non-union?
180 roughly, give or take, given vacancies, things like that. 180 is the number we typically use. And that's full-time, benefits eligible. We have another number of 100 call firefighters, seasonal employees, et cetera.
Right. So, government is definitely not business. And, a lot of businesses wouldn't have so many unions involved. But, in terms of like retirement plans and healthcare plans, is it normal for all the different units to have kind of have their pick of what they want to do, or are there any towns that would say, look, this is the healthcare benefit that's being offered, or does it just not normally work that way? You mentioned getting to equity and trying to make them as close as possible, but if those things were more consistent across all town employees, what would be the pros and the cons of that?
Yeah, so I can speak from my last decade of experience in the public sector, and I would say that most municipalities, I guess if we want to have the limits be there, tried, and I think most often are successful in having some really quite a lot of consistency with regard to medical insurance. Obviously that's not always the case. When I came here, again, there were some slight variations. Some groups had a slightly higher opt-out amount or incentive for the lower cost plan. It was just, there's kind of fine differences. So I don't think it's certainly not unheard of. I know that South Portland, I believe at one point, again, I don't know where they stand now, but they had 5 or 6 different employee groups across multiple unions. They may have even had more than that. And there were subtle differences. Maybe some groups decided to move to lower cost medical insurance before others. So some others had held out. What the cost of that was, again, I'm sure if someone went through the process, they could say, yes, they held on to the higher cost medical insurance. However, they didn't get this other benefit or incentive over here that everyone else you'll see does have. So I don't think that's completely unheard of. In terms of retirement plans, for those employers in Maine State Retirement, the nice thing is that if everyone that's in the plan, the 3C plan, for example, or the 1C plan, all of those employers are paying the same percentage and all the employees are paying the same percentage. So there is consistency. That's not sort of like an individually group rated benefit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Ken, any questions or comments about this part so far?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to offer that just keep in mind in the context of collective bargaining, it is, as the name suggests, we, as they do, need to approach the discussions in good faith, but they're free to put on the table whatever their issues, however selfish they might be. And so equity is something we strive for, but that's not to say we're able to accomplish that through the context of the unit's ability to bargain for what they think they need and they want.
And ultimately, whatever's recommended has to be approved by the council. So, I mean, even when there's a final offer, that's subject to the council approving it. And I think Liam's, I would say in the time that Liam's been, has done a really good job of quantifying the opportunities and the various, bargaining issues and tracking them over the course of the bargaining. One quick comment. I was surprised and pretty disappointed about the news of us having an additional unit, a Teamsters unit, organizing a group of 13 or 15 people this summer. The fact is, and Tom and Liam reminded me of this, that in the public sector, 80 or 90% of the employees are organized, are members of unions. That's very different than the public sector, which is much smaller percentage. So it's a totally different landscape.
Worth noting, there's another 15 or 17 employees on the vehicle maintenance side. So they are, work in the same building. They have different job functions. They were invited and recruited to be part of this effort. They voted not to. So, I don't know exactly what all of the grievances of the operational folks are, but clearly that's not a view shared among all the employees that work in that building.
Yeah, that was one bright spot. I think the other thing that was a little bit of a surprise, and I had to be reminded of it, was the fact that this is an authorization card campaign. Typically, when there is a campaign to organize employees, you go through a 30-day process, with a very energetic campaign where both sides present, the pros and cons of joining a union or not joining a union. In this particular case, there was a majority of people who signed cards, and that was sufficient under state law to grant for the state to certify the Teamsters as the new bargaining agent. So that's just another feature of life in the public sector, I think. So
really quick, we don't really need to go down this road because it's not totally germane, but at some point where we were laid off our non-union employees to part-time, and they were supposed to pick up the unemployment and then extra pay through COVID. I mean, were we able to determine that everyone successfully did that? Because I did hear from one resident who said they had a child or something working for the town, and they were having, there was a lot of problems with the unemployment system, being overwhelmed for the state. Were we able to confirm that every single employee was able to get what they, what we hope, what we more or less, I don't want to say promised, but what we had anticipated them getting?
I believe that the fairly safe answer is yes. I believe that everyone ultimately did receive all of their benefits they were entitled to. I will say that it was not nearly as smooth as we hoped it would have been, and actually represented it would have been. So that was extremely frustrating for our staff. But ultimately, I believe that sort of the analysis that we predicted, I think largely was. Was there a way for us to find out if anyone didn't? Because I would want to consider making that up if someone wasn't able to get. I'm fairly confident, Counselor, that everyone. It was a big. I spent a lot of time on the phone over those 3 months, and I'm pretty confident that anyone who was having an issue or had an issue.
You or their manager would have heard if they weren't getting. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate. I do. Just as
it never happens again, but I thought about it several times and was really concerned whether or not they were getting what we wanted them to get.
Right. It was not easy, but I do appreciate your concern. I'm fairly confident we're okay at this point.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Betsy, John, Liam. Go ahead. So back to you, Liam, then.
So that hopefully that provides some kind of some context in the last contract as to where we've come from. Again, some good headway. What I would propose for a process and timeline, just high level. So again, in August we did start collective bargaining negotiations with the new public works unit. Again, at this point, without getting into any real confidential detail, which I'm happy to do with this committee in the executive session, we're really working through kind of what status quo, understanding the concerns of both sides. Once it turns into something really substantive in terms of the conversations, we'll have a check-in, which we'll get to on this timeline. October, we also started, we're kind of referring to it as subcommittee work with our fire union. to start negotiations on non-economic items. Again, I fully appreciate that there's very little in a contract that doesn't have some tie to an economic feature, but we really characterize these as operational pieces. So we have a fairly expansive, again, 3, 4, 5 page shift filling policy, which is fairly taxing from an administrative standpoint. We've had 3 or 4 meetings at this point to talk about how to simplify that process and look at kind of staffing. So we thought we'd try to get some of those things out of the way before we start chewing on those economic items of wages, cost of living adjustment, insurance, retirement, things like that. What I would propose is in January, this committee come back together in an executive session, and we have some real candid conversation about what those economic objectives need to be or could be or should be. So we have some targets at the bargaining table so that we're not bringing back an agreement. Not that I think there's a huge risk of this, but we're not bringing back an agreement for consideration that's kind of DOA from a committee standpoint, never mind to the council. And again, I expect February 2021. Usually we start negotiating 120 days out from the expiration of the current agreement. I'm not aware beyond those economic items of any other contentious operational or work condition. Again, from our standpoint, I'm not aware of those. I haven't had in-depth conversations with the department head and command staff for police, but I'm not anticipating anything monumental. So I expect we'll commence those negotiations in February, again, with hopefully some idea from this committee as to what the appetite is for those economic items. And just a reminder, June 30, 2021, all 3 of our existing agreements are due to expire. Perhaps it would be helpful for the committee to understand that, if a contract, if we do not agree to a successor agreement by time it expires, all working conditions, rates of pay, benefit offerings, et cetera, are in the status quo status. So, essentially, if someone is due a step increase on their seniority date after June 30th, they're still entitled to it. They're not entitled to any future cost of living adjustments unless they're agreed to and negotiated. Again, they can be negotiated retroactively, and oftentimes the union would pursue something like that. But it doesn't mean that, just because a contract expires, kind of everything is thrown out and we're working from scratch. The expectation and obligation is to maintain all of those benefits outlined in the agreement, just without any incremental changes that aren't otherwise afforded. Okay.
Any questions or comments about the proposed timeline that Liam's offered here? I'm guessing, Liam, this is pretty similar to what we've done in the past. I'd like to highlight the fact that the session with us again in January would be very important, because that's where we said we want to spend most of our time is making sure we're aligned with the bargaining objectives and strategy for bargaining. And then we'll have a chance to come back again to see the economics when it gets closer to final offer time.
So I have a question. So I think without the 1-year extension, police, fire, and dispatch would not be all on the exact date. Is there a benefit or positive or negative for the town?
I expect Councillor Hamill will have some of his own comments on that. From my perspective, I certainly think there's a risk. I mean, there's this, because A, it's a lot of work, right? B, if you're trying to maintain that equity across the groups, you're trying to, it's almost like you have 3 race horses, you're trying to have them all cross the finish line at the same time. And so that can be, I think, challenging. With that said, I think what we typically see is this idea of pattern bargaining when you have them off cycle, where, let's say, so previously, the fire contract expired a year before the dispatch and police contracts, again, presuming they were 3-year agreements. What you often find in negotiations is that when you have that kind of outlier year, the starting point is kind of what everyone else has. So they sort of this presumption that on either end of those agreements, those years are kind of already approved, if you will, or they have a basis to ask for. If the last year of the fire contract is the first year of the police contract and the fire group's getting 3%, the police are going to ask for 3% because that's what the fire contract has. So why not start there? And so I think that's, again, some of my observations, but I'm sorry to steal your thunder, Councilor Hamill, if you have.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's I think the standard view, or kind of the review we've accepted. I think a pure management perspective would be skeptical of the unions, trying to get all aligned on the same timing. Considering the fact that would give them more bargaining power potentially, and also a greater threat if there's a threat of any kind of work stoppage or job action. Those things are not typical in public sector. So I mean, I think that there are, for the most part, efficiencies, and it's an easier process for us to manage, and it doesn't seem like we've really lost anything by doing that. But we had a pretty robust discussion before this ever got aligned that way, and we had a lot of discussion around it when we were going through the various concession discussions over the summer. So
yeah, and that's where I remember it from. Yeah, good view of the pros and cons. I suppose if it comes up again, you could always offer a 1, a 2, and a 3 year or something like that, and try to get it staggered again.
Yeah.
All right. Great,
so with this, is this something that we can say we approve, or as recommended, we're going to approve and follow this process? Is that something that you would like us to do?
I'm perhaps I tend to be more informal. I mean, I think that this is what I'd propose. Certainly, if the committee would like a different timeline, and again, the January meeting is not intended to be a one and done. I mean, I expect this will likely be a monthly check-in to the degree there's meaningful updates. But I think that if you're comfortable, if the committee's comfortable with this being the expectation of me as the staff contact, then just hold me accountable if it doesn't materialize.
So I'm fine with that consensus approach. I just want to confirm that would be agreeable and acceptable to my fellow committee members.
The thumbs up from me.
Okay, Ken?
Thumbs up, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
Silly question. You need to ground me. I'm sorry. I have some catch up to do, and I'll do that. So Liam, what actually comes to this committee? And the reason why I'm asking that is I remember what we did through the COLA negotiations in the last budget cycle, right? I mean, because you're HR, I mean, you're in the forefront of the negotiations with the bargaining units. And you brought the results of that to the town council as for discussion point and a vote to go back to the collective unit. So what's the difference with this committee and that exercise we did? I mean, I'm assuming you're still doing all the upfront sit down discussions, and the result of those come to this committee. Is that fair? That's correct. Yep. So how does it differ than what we did this past budget year?
So I think that the one big difference will be, planning and timing. Obviously, when we started negotiations with the fire contract by the time we started effectively intending to come to terms in a 3-year agreement, COVID hadn't happened yet. And then kind of what brought this back was this concept of a 1-year agreement. And, between scheduling and COVID considerations, we really didn't have the time to convene this committee to go through that process.
Okay.
And so that's really the difference. I think my hope for this committee would be that, this committee to some degree gets into the details of the financial analysis, has their questions vetted, and then almost like any other committee, it's brought ultimately to the council for a full vote and ratification, but the work's been done at the committee level with the support and recommendation.
Okay, that's fine. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Thank you. Tom.
Just very quickly, I see what happened with the fire contract being kind of a good warm up to what we're about to undertake. The point is, and this is again something new and different for this committee, so appreciate that we're kind of doing this all for the first time. But for us, I think the key is for us to get early input from this committee on particularly the economic terms, and then for us to take that information, help that formulate our negotiation strategy, do the work at the table with the unions, report back to you when we need to, and we should get further input and kind of take that back to the table. Ideally, we get to the end of the process with, meeting your goals and something you can recommend to the full council.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
That makes sense. Perfect sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom and Liam for that. Great.
Good question. Thanks.
Go ahead, Betsy.
I just said it was a good question. Thanks.
Great.
So I think that's all I had for you this evening in terms of a process overview. I think that, again, I think January will be, I expect there's going to be lots of questions, lots of requests. I think what I'd like to do in the executive session is go over, maybe some examples of analysis. I know that Councillor Hamill and I have had lots of discussions on how to properly cost out a contract. How do you price it versus status quo? Recognizing that just because status quo isn't free, it still increases the cost, presuming no turnover, which we talk about that assumption. So I think that will feed into it, but I didn't emphasize this maybe as well as I should have in that presentation, but the reality is that there are really, there's wages, which that's sort of the variable here is the cost of living adjustment and how we do that. Step increases, which again, right now, the status quo is that, if you want to change the wage scale, you can through the collective bargaining process, but with everything in collective bargaining, as Tom kind of referenced, it's really a give and take. And so nothing comes free. But the cost drivers are wages, they're medical insurance. We do contribute towards dental insurance. It's really a nominal expense. We provide 50% of the single coverage. It's really doesn't cost a lot. And then retirement. And so, there are certainly some fine points in there around incentives or stipends or extra pays, as they call them here. But the grand scheme of things, those are the things that are driving employer costs. So understanding that and getting a plan in place for what we might want to see proposed or changed to the degree we want to.
Just one final point. I think we're entering these negotiations. The backdrop is very different than anything I've ever experienced with at least 3 of these units, police, fire, and dispatch. These are folks that have been on the front line every single day during the pandemic. And, many of our neighboring communities paid extra pay, kind of combat pay, so to speak. So, we did not do that. So I mentioned that just it's in my mind that these are folks that are really highly valued, are professionals in their own right, have done really a tour of combat duty over the last year. And so I'm not saying we open up the piggy bank, but just keep in mind, I think many of them feel that way, that they, they've gone over and above, and I would have to agree with them generally. So it's going to be an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, year of unusual demands, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
To that note, really quickly, because I know we have to move on, but is that something that you've ever done, Liam, in this context, maybe not in Scarborough, but somewhere else, of like a one-time bonus type thing instead of an adjustment to the permanent contract?
I can't right off the top of my head recall whether I've recommended that. I know that that's been something that I know as a council we've discussed as a strategy. And I know that Councillor Hamill and Councillor Hayes, and again, I know everyone, I think is very well in tune with the idea of things that compound, right? So wage adjustments, impact retirement, they impact future adjustments, and this concept of, is there a different way to go about it? So I don't know whether that's something that we want to discuss or not. I think I'll leave that for January, but it's certainly something that's not unheard of.
Right. Yeah, I just think the context of, this unusual circumstance we've just been in particular, so that Tom was just mentioning.
Yeah, I just mentioned it because, we can expect that some of these conversations will be difficult. They may be somewhat combative. Ideally, it's collaborative, and much of it, I suspect, will be. So I just mentioned it as much for my own reminder that these are valued employees that have just been through hell.
Thanks for highlighting that, and we'll certainly keep that top of mind. So with that, I'd like to move to the next item, the town manager evaluation process and timing. We've got a couple of documents for that. Liam, I think there's just an overview of the timing. Let's go through that. And I thought we could click through very quickly the memo, plunk some dates into it, and then just basically commission you to send that out so that we can start, completing the process. But let's have a refresher first at the outset here. Thank you.
So again, very familiar format here. December. So this month we'll distribute, again, if approved and authorized, send out a copy of the evaluation form. We'll ask every counselor to complete that in their own right. Return it to me, which we'll get to. Last year, we also incorporated, we asked Tom to complete a self-evaluation using the same questions and scoring, which I think many of the counselors felt was helpful in their own kind of comparative analysis. Again, that's not stuff that's shared prior to, it's kind of done simultaneously. So then when we're looking at the analysis, we can, the council rather can have that as a data point. Give counselors roughly a month to complete it and return it. And then I consolidate that in, again, a format that I think everyone on this committee has seen before. So can kind of see, without getting into the names of the counselors 1 through 7, how they assess the manager on the rubric scoring, where the manager assessed himself, as well as some comparative data from prior years. So where are their trends? In January, the council will meet, as well as the immediate past counselor. So in this case, it will just be Counselor Hayes will be invited to return, meet in executive session, discuss the evaluation, any additional comments, and talk about a performance bonus. And then February 2021, again, historically, it's been, again, council chair, either past chair, again, there hasn't been turnover there, so that's kind of a moot point, or vice chair, meet with the manager to review the evaluation, provide feedback, and discuss general goals.
Great. Any questions about the timing? This is it's identical to what we did last year. This year, thank goodness, there's no employment agreement renegotiation.
I have a question. So I don't really see a time frame in here or if there's input from counselors besides the chair and the vice chair for goals for the upcoming year.
We would do that, I think, with the council in executive session. I mean, I think
January 2021. Okay.
So I can answer that question. If it's not clear on the timing, that would be a group session.
Sounds good.
And then Liam, Ken, any questions or comments?
Yeah, apparently I don't raise my hand. Yes. Maybe this is further on. I can't find it. I heard Liam say it and I can't find it. I remember last year that the scoring was different. Not everybody scored in the same method. We had percentages like 3.5, 2.5. Do you remember that? I recall that. It caused a problem.
I do recall, I think we had one counselor who would check, I think it was fairly straight. I thought it was fairly straightforward that there's sort of boxes 1 through 5.
Right.
They would check kind of right on the halfway line. And so I think I interpreted that as, that was, I think, me, rather than writing 3.5, I think I viewed that as 3.5. I think that if we want to avoid that this year, and I think it was fairly isolated, I think clarifying in the instructions that we asked them to keep it to whole numbers.
That will do it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken, for that. And then can you just briefly, I think I don't want to spend a lot of time on the form because it's the same one we used last year. But I would like to can we talk dates in terms of your memo?
Sure. Yeah. Did you want to go over any? Are we?
Yeah.
Okay?
Let's talk. Let's do the salary survey thing.
Okay, sure.
Could I just make a point? The goal discussion really does need to involve me. So I appreciate that the chair and vice chair will collect input from the full council, but then this should be a collaborative process in terms of goals as well.
Yeah, we
It might-
expect that will
yeah.
be, Tom. Remember we were kind of playing around with adding other forms to summarize stuff for this year, and I figured we would do that going forward, for the new performance year, because
Yeah.
we're really in
Yeah, and I
place.
think my employment agreement speaks, very well to that point. So I'm not concerned. I just want to
Yeah.
point it out to the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that.
Really quickly on the last point, if people felt they wanted more nuance, you could go to a 1 to 10 scale, because a 7 is different than a 3 or a 4. So I don't know. We don't have to.
So we had some prior discussion on this, Betsy, with the prior appointments committee, and I think the general feeling was that people wanted to keep the same instrument and scoring for comparison year on year sake and consistency. So that's sort of like how we got to this point.
And I would suggest when a counselor is in between numbers, they always round up. That would be my suggestion.
Duly noted, but not recorded.
So just briefly, this is kind of what we've been working off of. I think we've developed a fairly comprehensive salary survey, which tries to capture some of those finer details of a lot of managerial agreements. A lot of them have some kind of fringe compensation buried in there. I don't think that that's intended to be nefarious. I just think that each manager has different interests, different values. And so it's really difficult at times, if you look at something like the Maine Municipal Salary Survey, to really fully appreciate looking at base salary and get an apples to apples comparison in terms of what the total compensation is for each municipal manager. And so we have worked over the last, I think I've updated now 2 or 3 times. That includes, base compensation, any bonus structure that a manager may have, vehicle allowance, retirement contribution, so that you can really understand kind of apples to apples how Scarborough stacks up with other municipalities in that cohort. So that will be updated. I'll have to work diligently to get that out there and updated in the next month or so, but we'll do our best.
Just so you know, the work Liam's put in, the data collected in that kind of total compensation survey is so much more detailed than has ever existed. It's become the gold standard. So not surprising, all of my colleagues are calling Liam looking for a copy of that for their own use.
So this was a really good piece of work, and it's helped us to make fact-based, data-based decisions. So I think it's been good all around. So really nice work on this, and each year keeps getting more refined and more comprehensive. So.
Should be licensing revenue coming out of that, Liam.
I've been doing more and more work pro bono here with our neighbors, but it's all good. It's all good. All right, so I'll stop that, and then we'll move on to the actual form so we can talk about dates. Is that correct, Councilor Henry?
Yeah, let's just talk about the memo with the dates. Just what I'd be inclined to do would be to issue it tomorrow and tell everybody they got until the end of the month, given the that's essentially almost a full month, 3 weeks. They know the drill. We should be able to turn it in that time frame if that is agreeable.
Okay, let me just one more thing here to share.
I know this is a busy month. We got a lot of things going, but there's an old expression: if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. So,
Fair enough.
See if that works.
All right, so I think that so if we distribute it tomorrow, which would be the 8th.
Yeah.
What are the wishes of the committee in terms of turnaround time? Do we want to grant more than 2 weeks? Are we thinking 3 weeks?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Ken and Betsy on this. The 28th would be 3 weeks, or the 29th. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Or it could go calendar year, just go right to the end of the year, 31st, New Year's Eve.
But then what was the January date for?
I would compile it. So I probably only need a day or so to compile that, and then I would redistribute it to the full council for their review. And then as long as the council had an executive session on their docket for January, then that conversation can happen.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, tell you the truth, Don, I don't see why more than 2 weeks would be needed.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
that's
all
fine.
know we all know what's coming. It's
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. 2 weeks if you want to do that. And
Yeah.
then it gives, Liam a little more elbow
that's right.
room.
Give Liam more time. We just have to stress it because certain councils get distracted. You have 2 weeks.
Why don't we say the 25th? Again, it's going to come likely electronically anyway. So
End of the week.
Friday the 25th.
Yeah.
Christmas Day?
Christmas Day. We're all
Well, I guess we'll see, Tom, whether you're.
Tom's but maybe.
Hey,
So Tom, what does that say? Will you get a better evaluation?
I don't know. I don't know how to take that.
what better present would you get?
Could go either way.
Yeah, you got
Hole in the stocking.
Yeah,
Or
there you go.
That's
It's
right.
an orange or pink gold.
that's a
I
good year. Yeah.
I just have this image of a couple of people, stragglers, saying, damn it, I've got to do this on Christmas Day. I don't like my chances in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, plus like the town office won't be open, so
No.
maybe.
Why don't we say the 23rd?
Yeah.
23rd? That's a little over 2 weeks. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Tom,
Yeah.
they'll still be in the spirit.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I think they would look at our committee and go, "What the heck were those people doing?" Yeah.
All right. So I think that we're good on that. And then I think at this point, let's just move to if there aren't any other questions, we'll just move to start going through some staffing. So we'll just turn to the staffing worksheet. By the way, Tody and Tracy did an amazing amount of work on this. So it's really, I mean, every year, last year we had 35 vacancies. I guess there's a similar number this year. So it's there's always a pretty big wave of this. And the one thing I'd like to say at the outset, it's, we're not going to get through the whole thing tonight. We're going to kind of do this in sweeps and iterations. So, we'll go as far as we can, and then we'll call time. And if there's possibly a chance we could meet again before January, if the committee is so inclined. So with that, let's just, let's turn to the worksheet and go through that. And I know everybody's had a chance to read this. So let's start with the Board of Assessment review.
I have a question. That's
Yes.
the one that meets only if necessary, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Can you explain that this one is always a mystery to me?
Yeah, it is only as necessary. I can tell you during the revaluation, they were extremely busy. So I don't expect that their workload will nearly, be close to what it has been over the last 24 months or so. But you're right, they do meet as needed. I suspect it'll be a little slower than it has been for sure.
So what would you say is typical?
They may not meet every other month. Again, it depends whether there's an abatement that's been received. And the first order of business is the assessor considers the abatement. What I know of Nick so far is I think will find ways to satisfy those issues. If he can't, those are the ones that end up before this board. So,
Okay.
So for this one, one thing I would say, these are also, they can be kind of technical. So it's, I think it's important to have someone who has, good quantitative skills. Do we know how many terms Mr. Herrick has served?
he's been around a while. I would say it's at least 2 terms.
Okay. And we have potentially Mr. Freilinger, who I also noticed was a candidate for several other positions, but he is a possibility for a full voting member. So what's the committee's preference on this? You want to take a minute and look at, can someone speak to Mr. Herrick's background? Tom, I don't know him.
He works in insurance. He's been a very active member of the board, stood in as chair when Mr. Peoples has been available. Yeah, I would recommend you consider him for reappointment. I think he's done a tremendous job.
And Tom, I'm sorry, who is the chair on this board?
Alan Peoples has
Okay,
been
he's,
longtime chair.
So why
so
is
but isn't he resigning? Isn't he?
I heard from Tony at voter time that he's moved out of town, so I don't think he's
Okay.
eligible anymore. I can't confirm that, but that's the rumor I heard.
So we may have to revisit that at some point, right? Once we kind of know what his status is.
The full voting member is People's old spot?
I believe so. It must be. I don't see his name there, so I presume he's already resigned.
Yeah, I had heard that he was moving to Florida or something. He was moving.
Yep.
So what's the committee's preference? Do you want to consider Mr. Freilinger, search for other candidates, or go ahead and make a staffing decision tonight on Board of Assessment?
Question.
Yes.
Apparently I'll question when I raise my hand because you're not seeing my hand.
Okay.
Just again to ground me, this work was done by our town council, our
Town clerk.
town clerk, please. So, and the recommendations also came from the town clerk?
Correct.
Okay, I mean, as we're viewing this right here, right? I mean, the results of this are totally.
Yeah, this is the process we followed, pretty much in the past. She serves it up to us, but it's within our sole authority and responsibility to decide what to do.
I'd kind of like to maybe, well, this might not be possible, but I'd kind of like to see if we can go through maybe round one and talk about all of them and then go back and appoint. I was trying to go through and see who all was, like.
We can do that. We can certainly do that. The one caution is that may be as far as we go tonight because
I know, but yeah, so that's why I'm saying I don't want to goof it up. So that's just a thought.
So do you know enough on this one, or do you need more time or candidates?
Well, I know Mr. Freilinger had had put in application for a number of different places, and so I'm just kind of wondering, where, and he had, what appeared to be like a very good background in planning and things like that. So I'm just trying to see, where we would best use him.
Well, why don't we stay with Freilinger for a minute? He and three other people were candidates for more than one committee or board.
Right.
Freilinger, Foster, Scudder, and LaRue were listing multiple committees. I think since then also Marvin Gates, and we may have others that are. I
think the reason Tony's recommending him is that he's the only one that expressed interest in the Board of Assessment Review, among others.
Yeah, that's something not to be lost, because this is not one that a lot of people are queued up.
Yeah, Tony's not playing favorites here. I think if she makes a recommendation, she is doing it because they're the only one that expressed interest in that committee.
Oh,
right, maybe.
With that knowledge, do you want to?
That doesn't hold true on all of them, because
but let's stay with this one for the moment. Can we make a decision on this or not? You want to keep going with what you know, or we take a minute to look at Mr. Freilinger's background? Do we have enough information to be able to make a recommendation for the council in terms of an appointment or appointments?
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just explain to me the process, right? We're looking at this item in front of us. And what is the expectation? Make a motion to say, yes, we approve as is, move to the council? Is that what the format is?
Yeah, I'd take a minute and review Mr. Freilinger's background. Maybe we could talk about that as a group. We've had some discussion so far about Mr. Herrick. That's still, 2 alternate vacancies. And then we decide whether we know enough to be able to make a staffing recommendation, or we want to get more candidates, or just table the whole thing. You have several options.
Well, let me ask. I'm assuming there's not, could be a bad assumption, we know what those do, that there's really no specific skill set needed for this committee, right? And that's not degrading the value of the committee. It's just that, you don't need to be a retired assessor to be qualified to be on this committee, correct?
That's correct, but I would say I think it does require a higher level than most other committees. A number of them that gravitate to this have experience in real estate.
Okay. point.
You're right, it's not required, but I think it is helpful. This stuff can be fairly detailed, fairly dense.
Yep. Okay.
And Mr. Freelinger's background includes 20 years of experience in financial and corporate projects, financing, budget management, personnel oversight.
Right.
And he SEDCO, Board of Assessment Review, he talks about other things, incentives. So
He's a CFA. What does that stand for?
Certified Financial Advisor.
Advisor? Okay.
Yep.
It appears he has a BA from Harvard in history.
So don't hold that against him.
Okay, fair enough. As a Cornell grad, right?
So you want to have some discussion on this, or what's the feeling of the committee on this one?
I'm wondering if we want to try to see, I think Mr. Freilinger is great, and I hope, I'm definitely for him for some of the committees. I'm just wondering if we want to try to, beat the bushes a little more throughout December. Because this is super impactful, people's, people's property tax. And how would you say, Tom, the demographics of this committee kind of skew?
Where they live?
No, the demo, like that. So we have 2 women, it looks like, and then age-wise, what would you say?
They're all older than 40. I can say that. I don't want to speculate beyond that.
Oh, the threshold is so low now.
Well,
Question.
yes.
How do you gauge the individual? I know he's mentioned on several committees. I mean, he's selected several committees he's interested in. So
Right.
How many committees would you put him on without a discussion with him? What's his bandwidth?
I doubt we would staff someone on more than one committee. We generally would just do one.
Well, we have several, Marge, who's on here, she's on more than one committee.
Yeah.
Right, but I didn't staff her on those. I'm saying
Okay.
under this realm, my bias is, not get carried away with too many duplicate assignments, but there are some people that have bandwidth that can do more than one. So
Well, that's what I was asking about. Like, this one isn't a regular meeting. It's as needed. So I think there's a little bit of a difference between an as needed and we know it's going to meet every month,
Right.
twice a
the
month.
heavy lift is something like a planning board assignment. That's a very heavy lift that
Right.
they
Right.
need every week, if need
Yeah.
be. So
Well,
that's,
If you want the discussion, I'll just be straight up and honest about it. I see this gentleman fitting on a different committee.
okay.
Yeah, I agree. I do
I
too.
see him on long-range planning.
Great.
Yeah. That's where I saw him more on long range.
So let's-
planning.
Let's hold him for the discussion on long-range planning. Unless you want to go ahead and appoint Herrick. Don't move on just yet. I want to try to nail down as many
Yeah.
of these as we can.
Herrick,
Drive them
Yes,
crazy.
definitely.
So that's my job.
Yeah.
So Herrick.
So make a motion. You want a motion?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
I make a motion that we reappoint Chris Herrick as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2023.
Do I have a second? Okay, discussion. Yeah, I think he's qualified, and I think that would be, a good move. I'm going to go ahead and take the vote on that. Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisting,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. So it's unanimous recommendation to recommend Christopher Herrick for the chair and for appointment to the Board of Assessment Review.
Now, do they pick their own chair or do we pick the chair?
I thought was he recommended as the chair?
They'll organize themselves.
Okay, so retract that statement. So,
And that's true with all committees, correct, Tom?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
okay. Thanks, Tom. So that's, and we'll come back around with Mr. Frailing, and we'll do another pass of this in a future meeting for the other vacancies. Thank you. One committee, one position staffed. Nice work. Coastal Waters. Now at the outset here, I'm going to say we've had some twists and turns on this one. Liam Erickson was a late respondent, but he has unequivocally expressed his interest to be reappointed. This would be his second. And I also need to make a statement that Liam Erickson is my nephew. So that said, I feel capable of being able to speak about him objectively. He's had a good year. I think he's a very active clam digger, and he takes notes. He's been a good contributing member of Coastal Waters. I've served on that as the liaison past year.
So Don, I know you've been very active in these issues, and of course, Tom, I know you know a lot about this too. So, coastal waters, harbors, shellfish, I know it's different, but can somebody kind of describe to me, why we have two committees that deal with these areas?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You want to start, Tom, and I can filigree.
Yeah. Well, Coastal Waters is a much more recent one. They are really charged with things such as the mooring fee, the mooring management, and kind of anything waterfront related, if you will. Whereas Shellfish is actually a function of I don't know if it's a statute, Don, but we are able through our local Shellfish Commission to make many of the decisions that otherwise would be done by Department of Marine Resources. In terms of how,
not just a committee.
Right. I think they have a higher stature in my mind, and the work they're doing is very important in terms of maintaining all of our shellfish areas, closures and the like, water quality. There's some really important work that this group does.
Okay.
Yep, the members have on the Shellfish Committee, there's a Shellfish Commission. They're actually required to meet once a year. We had that meeting a week or so ago with Tody and also with Randy Richardson, the acting harbor master. And so their job is to really take responsibility for tracking the health of the our shellfish areas. They participate in shellfish conservation activities. Each person is required to do a certain number of hours that include things like crab kills and so forth, killing blue crabs. So, that they're a little bit different. Coastal, and the clammers tend to be on the Shellfish Committee, and a lot of the lobstermen are on the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee. But there are a couple of people that are on both of the committees.
Thank you.
Yep. So you have.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Comment. I agree with this selection of the applicant. She works for Poland Springs, environmentally friendly and all that good stuff. Side note is, if you have never seen the way that we seed our clam flats, it's a sight to behold. You ought to sometime go down, throw on the old boots and take a walk down. I used to have one of those resident licenses that allowed me, I think I can't remember, I think it was 2 pecks a day. And I'd shoot off in the morning, get down there and rake them. But anyway, we have a great outfit. But I think Mr. Erickson on here, Megan Cofield is a good fit with this.
Okay.
So,
I'd say we renew Erickson as a full voting member, and Megan Cofield, she doesn't have much experience, but that she would become a full voting member.
Mr. Erickson did not respond to the emails.
No, he did. We followed up and he did.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
okay.
Confirm that. Tody's not here to confirm that. He sent an email. He had the wrong email address. Tody had the wrong email address.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so it's a reappointment and a vacancy fill.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we're only missing the 2 alternates. So
correct.
I guess that's, yeah. Okay.
And that one full voting member is only it's finishing somebody else's term, I think. So that's why it's only a 1 year vacancy. I forget who that was, but we can staff both of those, Liam and and the full voting member.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Erickson to serve as a full voting member until 2023, and Ms. Caulfield to serve as a full voting member to 2021.
Outstanding. Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion. So I'd like to take the vote. Counselor Gleistein,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
and I'm also in favor of this. So that's unanimous recommendation. And we will.
Question though, if you don't
Go
mind,
ahead.
question. Because that was a vacancy, why is this just not extended to 2023?
Because as I mentioned, it was completing a remainder of somebody else's term. So
Okay,
that, yeah, so it's a
Okay.
1-year term, but then they'd have the opportunity to be renewed for a 3-year.
okay,
But
Yeah, all
I
of
can't
these have,
remember. I can't remember who the departing person was.
no, neither, but all of these have staggered terms such that you don't have massive turnover all in the same year.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Great question. Community services. So, I mean, some of these big ones we're not going to get to tonight, but why don't we go as far as we can, at least with these in alpha order, and we'll talk about having another meeting. If that sounds okay to the group. We have 10 minutes left, so I'd rather not, I don't think that's going to allow us enough time to get into the heavy lifting here.
Yep,
Is that, Betsy, are you okay with that?
Sure, I can go longer too, but that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I'd say it might give us a chance to kind of get a little rhythm, and then we can do a little more legwork on the other ones. And maybe we spend some time at the end trying to talk about how we try to turn the crank for more candidates. So,
question.
all right. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just to let you know, in the communications committee meeting before this, I really gave kudos to Allison about her front page solicitation on this, because she did show the actual openings on the website. Told her that we would probably be working with her to pursue that further, because we do have a lot of
Yeah.
commitment, so.
Ken, thanks for mentioning that. I think we've made outstanding strides in the past year in terms of how we're communicating and generating interest and participation, not only in these committees, but also the ad hoc committees. So,
Right.
and I know that is
Okay.
our
Question,
new
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is it within protocol to reach out to a candidate
Yeah, there's
between
nothing
now and the
wrong with
next meeting?
Yeah,
Pardon me?
there's nothing wrong with that at all. No. The thing I would say is we should, however, be doing that along with, we shouldn't be relying on word of mouth only. We should be doing that in concert with something that would be available to anyone in town by going to the website. So
Maybe that, I think he said, Ken, no, it's no problem. But the way that came out, Don, it got over. So it's no problem if we reach out to people, Ken. I don't know how it came across.
yes, my response was yes, and yes,
Yes.
that's okay to do that. And we could be, doing the blast work that we're doing, and, making use of PDF online apps and that sort of thing.
Well, it might kind of be fun. I don't know if we could get the word out, would be to have a virtual volunteer job fair, for lack of a better term, where we kind of discuss the committees and point people to where the charges are and talk about everything we have open, and just let people just ask questions. What does this committee do? How much do they meet? And try to beat the bushes for something like that, like a job fair almost.
Yeah, somebody had offered that, but I guess I don't know where the concept is right now and what the timing would be. So a good idea. Community services, I think, is next. We've got 2 vacancies. Leroy Crockett, he's no longer in Scarborough. So that's 1 vacancy, and Mr. Lindsay is not seeking to continue. We have one application on file, Karen Shoup. Is it pronounced Shoup or Shoupy, Tom? Do you know?
Shoop.
I know Karen from, we staffed her last year on the Board of Assessment Review. And she's been operating as the chair. And I don't know if you've been any
Zoning
time.
board. Zoning
What?
board. Right.
I'm sorry, zoning board. And she does an outstanding job. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch her in action.
Oh,
but
yeah.
she's
Yeah, I
a
have.
real
confident.
super talent.
Right. So yeah, she's one that's, I mean, it's great. These are folks, you know, that are doing a lot, but she's ZBA, and I believe we appointed her to Charter Commission.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, and this is a popular committee. So that's good news.
Any other discussion about candidates? So they're proposing moving Patricia Brigham from second to full voting member, and then Karen to first alternate. This is pretty common, but we sometimes do make movements. We do skip over people from time to time in terms of the alternate to full voting member move. So I don't know Patricia Brigham.
I guess this might be one where, you know, well, I guess she already knew how much she was involved in before she applied, but Charter has not really picked up. I mean, we don't have, were any of the other people who were applied for more than one committee, did they express interest in community services?
Not according to the worksheet or their applications, no.
No.
Okay.
There were those 4 people we mentioned at the beginning, but these are the only ones we had for community services.
Can I make a motion that we move as recommended?
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to take, so just to recap, this would be a motion to move the recommendation, Patricia Brigham from second to alternate to full voting member, expiring 2021, and Karen Shoup to be appointed first alternate. I'll take the vote. Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Gleifstein,
Yes.
and I'm a third, so that's another unanimous recommendation.
So is this leaving one position open? Is that right?
Yes.
One alternate position still open?
Correct.
Yep.
So when these are actually appointed, I'm sure Tody will update this and reflect the ongoing vacancies so you can continue your work.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And we'll talk about the process once we kind of wrap up here at the end. We'll talk about the next steps or the recommendations we're making. Do you want to do one more? We'll take one more here. Conservation Commission, and then just draw the line at historic preservation. I want to be respectful of time, and I failed to mention this at the beginning of the meeting, but I wanted to say welcome to the 2 new members of the Appointments Committee and Negotiations Committee. So thank you for coming, and thank you for jumping right in. So I completely.
And you did a lot of work, Councilor Hamill, getting us ready for this, which was a huge help to me, which people don't really realize. You know, I would not have been ready without all your help on it. So I really appreciate it.
If you ever seen those pictures of an old gymnasium with a medicine ball and Indian clubs, it was kind of like that. You know, we were throwing those around.
Yeah, I would not have been ready. I appreciate it. So a question on Conservation Committee.
Yes.
And again, I know that this has got a higher status, but we also have a Parks and Conservation Land Board and a Sustainability Committee.
Yeah.
So can someone kind of, you know, discuss the differences between those? And
Yeah.
Sure.
Tom, can you start there? And
yeah,
I'll
I can.
follow along. We might reference or pass that committee consolidation opportunities. Sure. That was resounding.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Conservation Commission is one of those positions I think recognized in state law. It does hold some prominence in that regard. Parks and Conservation Land Board is very specific. That is a group that's solely tasked with reviewing applications and making recommendations for use of land bond funds. So their existence is totally around that issue and only that issue.
Okay.
And then finally, the Sustainability Committee, that was previously called the Energy Committee, and they found their work kind of began to expand slightly beyond just the energy title, but that continues to really to be their focus. I think you'll find them dabbling in probably into sea level rise and those sorts of things, and so there will be some crossover with some of these other groups as well, and that's to be expected and encouraged, frankly. So these are three committees that really kind of have a distinct area carved out for them, but there's undoubtedly some overlap with a couple of them.
And Conservation Commission, how frequently do they meet?
At least monthly. They're one of the very consistent meeters. This year's not been a good example of that because of COVID, but yeah, they're a very active committee.
And the land bond, they only meet when there's a potential property.
Correct.
Okay. And sustainability, they meet?
Again, frequently, monthly. Our sustainability coordinator is the staff support for conservation and sustainability at this point.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I motion to the recommendation, reappoint Mr. Keller and Ms. Nixon as full voting members with terms to expire in 2023, and appoint Ms. Springer as full voting member till the term expire 2021.
Great. Do I have a second? Betsy.
Yeah, I can second.
Okay, some discussion.
Yeah, so we had
Right.
a couple of people who want to stay on.
Yep.
Keller and Nixon. And they've been on for how long?
At least a full term. My recollection, Susan Nixon might be your 2 terms. I'm working off memory here.
This be maybe like her 3rd term?
You'd be considering her for a 3rd term, I think.
Yep. And in the past, we've had that as a rule of thumb. It's not a hard and fast rule. We've followed it in some cases, but you know, there are exceptions to that. But I think you will find historically we've relied on, and this has been a topic of some discussion, we have relied on returning members for continuity and in the absence of, you know, more robust applicant flow.
And I'm just trying to flip back through to Springer application because I didn't memorize them all.
She's an organic farmer currently.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Worked previously in corporate America, Wex
Right.
Unum.
Yep. Yeah, that seems like a good fit.
Good. So with that, I'm going to take the vote then. All those in favor of us following the recommendation, that was
I have another question.
by
I have a
Councilor
quick question.
So Councilor Gleisten,
I have another question. I'm sorry.
you're
So-
killing me. Okay.
Yeah. So do you know why? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 members, but no alternates. It's just 7 members.
I believe that's correct.
We all 7 vote on everything.
I don't know that we've ever been fully staffed, to be honest, but you're right. There are 7 full voting members, no alternates on this committee.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try it one more time. I'm taking a vote for the recommendation as posed. Councilor Gleisten.
I'm gonna not vote for a second. I did it. Who else? Okay, never mind.
3 choices. You have 3 choices: yes, no, or abstain.
Right. Yeah. I got it. I was just missing one thing. Okay. Yes.
So is that it? You're yes? Did you say?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson.
Can you ask me tomorrow? No, I vote yes.
We're asking you now. We'll call it as yes.
I vote yes.
So that's three votes, unanimous recommendation. And with that, I'd like to draw the line at this point and have us do some wrap up discussion, if that's agreeable to this committee. I'd like to propose that we meet again in 2 weeks. Maybe we could meet on the 21st of December and try to take another cut at moving through the rest of the list. And in the meanwhile, redouble our efforts in terms of communicating the remaining vacancies. Does that sound reasonable? I'll be looking for a nod from my colleagues.
Very willing to do that.
Ken?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's what we'll do. And then the other thing I'd say is that just in terms of process, Tom and Liam can help me here. Tody's a master of this, but we do this in 2 moves. So in the next town council meeting, we will post, we will announce the recommendations for the appointments, to the town council, and the town council, that's like a first reading, and then there will be a second reading and a vote in the subsequent council meeting. There is some work we'll do in the meanwhile. We'll confirm interests and accepts and make sure the chairman of these committees are comfortable with what we're recommending, but the authority remains with the committee to recommend to the council, and the council appoints.
Don, normally I'd suggest that you post the names that you've decided tonight, just to move that forward.
Okay.
It being December, it being a virtual environment, I don't expect it's going to necessarily hamper the ability of any of these groups to do their business between now and when you convene again. For sheer efficiency purposes, it may make sense to hold the posting until after your meeting on the 21st and bring ideally all of them at once.
We could certainly do that. Certainly do that. I don't think we have the only thing I'd say is that it's pretty easy to squeeze into a town council meeting. I typically do it with committee updates, and I just read them into the record. They're often not even on the agenda, to do that as a first notice. So I don't.
Perhaps you and I, Paul, can talk about it on Wednesday. I think you can go either way, and it's perfectly fine. It's just a matter of how busy, how many times you want appointment issues to appear on the council agenda.
No problem. So what I'll do though is that, I think when we've done this in the past, we've had several meetings where we go through, rounds of this at this time, each year or so. But let's talk about it in the leadership meeting, and we can come back to the committee with that. Does that sound?
Since we agreed to meet on the 21st, and we won't have anything else on the agenda, I'm assuming, because we went through 2 other items tonight. It might be good for cohesiveness to kind of do it all at once. It's just my thought. But
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with doing it in one big move. Ken, do you have a preference?
No, that sounds fine.
Okay, great. So we'll do it the way that has been suggested, to try to gather them all and do it in one release. Provided we can meet again and also try to get this moving on a timing. By January, like we had committed. So
I'd like to say thank you to you, Don, and Ken, for agreeing to meet on the 21st, because the faster we get our committees up and running, the faster the work goes, and we get more things done. And I know everyone's really busy, but I really appreciate it, and I think it's great.
And can we just confirm the steps that we'll take from a communication standpoint to be clear that, we can execute those? We had talked about the possibility of getting the PDF blank for all committees available on the website. Is that something, Tom, that you and staff can do with Allison?
I'm sorry, just renewing the request for candidates?
Yeah. And for us, I think we haven't really listed, all of the vacancies potentially, for example. So I'd like to get everything up there. I think some of them, long-range planning, for example, not all of them were on there.
Okay. Yep. I'll work with staff. I can't promise that we'll produce results before the 21st, but we'll try.
Yeah. If something's expiring, and I know this is a quick turnaround for this, but I think, this is going to be important going forward. I think we need an online fillable form. Google form or something like that, because, you know, you've got younger people who are going to see print it out, scan all that. And I'm not no cut on younger people, but, I think I appreciated the person who actually, you know, said, see this, because I could read everything where they just type stuff in, you know, answering the questions. And I just think we're probably overdue for getting a fillable form online.
Yeah, no doubt. We should do it. We should have that. We will. I can't promise it that we're going to have it for.
You did that for charter. I think you did that for charter and downtown ad hoc somehow.
So we've got about an even, almost close to a dozen more to go. And we've done tonight 1, 2, 3, 4. So nice start. That's a good start. So especially, you know, considering the agenda, and, you know, Betsy and Ken are seeing this for the first time. So really nice work with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Any other topics we want to cover? I think we'll try to devote most of the next meeting to staffing. So let's just say that for now. It'll be like a one agenda item meeting on the 21st.
Well,
And yep,
good, because that's why I bought into the 21st. It's a single agenda item.
great.
Yep.
We will have singular focus, and it'll allow us to do some legwork in the meanwhile.
And 5:30 is a fine time for me. I know that's your normal time, and that works for
Right.
me.
Yep, it's good.
So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, and all in favor, Councillor Johnson,
Yes.
Councillor Gleisten,
Yes.
and I am in favor of that as well.
Thank you very much, Liam and Tom. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
guys.
Much
Thanks.
appreciated. Great job. Thank you. Bye.
Great job.